Not sure if a lot of you know, before we came to Indiana, we were out in South Dakota for 12 years. I went from a pretty big town of Oshkosh, Wisconsin. I don't know, probably 200,000 people there. And God had a really good sense of humor when he put me out in South Dakota in a town of 90. And the closest thing I came to seeing someone milk a cow was in the grocery store when it was in the bottle already. And as far as gardening and planting, I mean, our houses were so tight together growing up that we didn't have a plot to do any kind of growing. And I got out to South Dakota, and I was researching, I was talking up to Storm, about how we want to do things, and I want to be integrated into the culture. And so we decided we're gonna plant a garden. And Christine and I, we went out. Remember that very first one we had? It was awful. But I wanted to plant potatoes. I love potatoes, and I'm going. I have no idea. I looked all over. I couldn't find potato seeds. And I asked the neighbor next door, and I said, how do you plant potatoes? And he says, here, I'll bring a bucket out to you. And he brought a bucket out, and it was all these chopped up pieces of potatoes. And I thought he was trying to pull one over on me. I said, how in the world are you going to grow anything with that? He says, seriously, that's how you do it. And Christine confirmed it because she knows a little bit about farming. Yeah, you put the potato eyes in there. So, anyways, we went off for the summer and had to go to schooling and different things, and came back and the weeds had overgrown everything. I mean, I didn't know anything about weeding, but we got a few things out of it, but it wasn't very good. But I figured out you have to have the right thing to sow in order to reap the right harvest. And Daryl would contest to that, and the rest of you farmers, that if you're going to plant corn, you're not going to get beans, and that's just bottom line of it, or potatoes. So you gotta be careful about what you sow in order to reap the harvest, and that's what we're going to talk about this morning. I want to walk through a little bit. If you want to earmark or write down Genesis 27, we're not going to read the whole scripture. I had a lot in the bulletin, but I want you to remember Jacob, the man Jacob. He was Esau's brother, and he ended up taking his birthright is what he did. He faked out his dad. He put hair on his arms because Esau was he was a kind of a burly guy. He was out and a hunter and all that kind of stuff. And he went in and he deceived his father to get the birthright. And Esau, after Jacob got it, he came and asked for his birthright from his dad. He says, "Oh, I already gave it to you." And he said, "No, you didn't." And in other words, Jacob came in and he stole his birthright from Esau. And Esau got pretty mad. He threatened to kill him. So Jacob, and he was the cook. I mean, he was more the kitchen guy. He got scared and he took off. And he ends up hooking up with Laban, his uncle. And Laban, he had daughters. He had Rachel and he had Leah. And Jacob, he saw Rachel coming. And he said, "Ooh, look at that. That's who I want." And he said, "Well, how can I get Rachel?" And basically, Laban said, "You work 7 years for me, and you can marry Rachel." So he worked 7 years, and he flew by fast because he loved Rachel. He had his eye on her. That's who he wanted, and he got married. And back then, you would have this big, huge veil over your head, and so they went up there and they got married, and they went back in the tent. They consummated the marriage, and they had to show proof that they were virgins and all this kind of weird stuff. But pretty much the whole town was involved in this because when they came out, everyone went, "Woo, look at that!" And but he woke up the next morning, and here's Leah. It wasn't Rachel. The father deceived him. And right there started the process of sowing what you reap, or reaping what you sow. Because he sowed that deceitfulness with his father. He took the birthright. He was deceitful. And Jacob said, what are you doing? How can you do that to me? He said, well, I'm the father, he says, and we're going to marry off the oldest one first. Now, if you want Rachel, work another 7 years. And this process went on and on and on with Jacob and being deceived by Laban, his father-in-law, because it happened with that, and then it happened with the herds and the different things. So over time, this is what happened with Jacob. Was he was being hogwash is what he was doing, because he did this here, he was reaping this over here. I want to look at Galatians 6:7. Because you're wondering, where in the world is the guy going with this? But I want you to think about the seeds that you're planting. Okay? What are you sowing today? What kind of seeds are you sowing? Because you will reap what you sow. That's what we're going to get into this morning. You will reap what it is. And a lot of people say, well, I changed my life. I came to Christ and all this stuff. That's good. But you're still going to reap what you sow. Because if you were sowing bad seed here, chances are it's going to catch up with you over here. Now, we're going to talk about how do we get through that area of our life, but it's going to happen. Galatians 6:7. It says, do not be conceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. And then Job 4:8-9 says, my experience shows that those who plant trouble, cultivate evil, will harvest the same. A breath from God destroys them. They vanished in the blasts of his anger. In Proverbs 1:31, it says, they will eat the fruit of their ways and be filled with the fruit of their schemes. Now, did you ever think about how you're doing things, how you're doing life, and what you're actually sowing, and what you're pouring into something, and really what's going to come out of that? Because we have a lot of people that are just angry people. And if they're angry, that produces anger. That produces people that just don't want to be around you. Or are you sowing friendships? Are you sowing relationships? Are you sowing love and compassion and caring? Because that's what you'll reap. Because if you're not doing that, and we sit back and we wonder sometimes, well, why don't I have the friends that I need? Why don't I have the relationships that I need? Why don't I have that? And the first thing is, are you sowing into that first? In order to reap that, are you sowing into it? We can't just sit back and say, well, why can't I have these things? When really Christy and I started getting into our faith journey and our walks, and that, when my brother Rick was a very, very influential person in my life, and I didn't even know about it. He was one that was praying for us really since we got married. He married us, and I remember this day, our wedding vows that we took, and he was preaching. He basically saying everything that we're going to need is right here in this book. Everything that we need, everything that we, and at the time, he was the black sheep of the family. We had 4 brothers who really didn't care if we got to church or not, and we ran around and we did some of the things we shouldn't be doing. And here's my brother, in 4th grade, he already knew that he was going to be a preacher. So he was the geek. I mean, he was the outcast of the family. He was way over here. We didn't have any kind of really good relationship with him at all. But my brother, he was praying for us and praying for us and praying for us. And when we finally made a decision to really follow Christ in our lives and bring the kids up, I found out that he had been praying all this time without actually, just Bible thumping you. He was very, very gracious and very, very loving towards us. He'd ask certain questions, and he'd ask you where you're at and whatnot. But as far as a spiritual person in our life, it was really neat to see him sowing that love and care into his brother and sister. I mean, and what he reaped from it, hopefully, is a good thing. But one of the things that he asked me, I know when we were having some financial troubles and some different things going on, he says, where's your tithing at? And I remember thinking, where's my tithing at? I mean, I can't even pay the bills right now. And you're asking me where my tithing's at. He said, well, I'm not just talking money here. I'm talking time. I'm talking your energy. I'm talking, yes, your finances too. He says, how are you being obedient with that? And I remember him sharing this scripture with me. It's Luke 6:38. He says, give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. And that's every aspect of our life of giving, of pouring back into God's work. And in other words, it's not going to come back void. Those are good seeds. Those are good things that we're sowing. And when we're sowing good seeds, we can reap good things. And I look at that scripture and I think, man, that's pretty profound as far as who we are and what we're about. And I pray that we're reaping that, because God just overwhelms us sometimes on his giving back to us. And I also know when we're not giving to him, because we reap not so good things sometimes. Because if you put that last in your life and you start not serving, you don't give the way you need to, you sit back and you go, man, I'm not reaping very good stuff right now. You can tend to tell that your schedule's filling up faster with things that don't matter. You realize that the money's not there the way you need it to be. And for me, I always look back and I say, well, how am I sowing into these things? And it's not a magic 8-ball by any stretch of imagination. Dean runs the Financial Peace University thing, and it's not a secret formula. You don't give in order to receive multiple riches. You give because we're obedient to God. And it's not just a financial part. It's your time. It's your service. One of the things coming up right now, is camps. The 5th and 6th grade just took off. We had some people going and they're counseling for the week. They're giving of their time. They're pouring into these kids. And they will reap some really good things off of that. It's not going to be financial necessarily. And just because you say, man, I'm gonna give 10% right off the top with everything that I do, it doesn't mean you're gonna get that back financially. God could bless you in a whole lot of different ways, but he will bless you. Because he says that. He says, test me. Test me. If I won't open up the floodgates and pour it on you, just be obedient. Galatians 6:9. This is where it comes in tough, because we come to Christ and we get into a routine of everyday kind of thing. It says, let us not get tired of doing what is good. For at the right time, we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. We give up sometimes because we're thinking, man, when am I going to reap my harvest? When am I going to get all these blessings that are poured out? And I like to look back at our lives sometimes. I don't know if you guys ever do this, but do you sit back and realize how blessed you are? At any time do you sit back and say, man, we are blessed people. And I'm not saying, you're getting everything you want. I'm telling you, figure out what are the needs that God is pouring into you. He says, I'll take care of your needs. He doesn't say I'm going to necessarily take care of your wants, but I'm going to take care of your needs. So do you have a roof over your head? Do you have food on the table? Do you have water? Do you have the essentials to do life? And because I'll tell you, in a whole other country, they're looking at their needs in a whole lot different way than we do here. Because we do. We think our needs is a roof over our heads, is heat in the house, is air conditioning running, is food on the table, all these kind of things. One of the things we have an opportunity to give back or to serve back is coming up. We're doing our cruise mission trip this year in March. And if you're at all interested, there's a sign-up sheet on the back. Now, we're going to be going to countries that are third world countries, Belize, Cozumel, Honduras. We're going to be feeding people in the dumps, all that kind of stuff. But I'll tell you, you block off a week like that, and you totally sow seeds into people in a third world country, you'll see the reaping of that. And we've seen that. We've seen that with these people that live in the dump and just getting fresh water and a few of the people getting out of it. You're reaping what you're sowing. So you can sit back and say, you know what? We were obedient by going there and doing that. Now we can sit back and get that. Now, sometimes it doesn't happen the way we want it to. Sometimes, our reaping of the harvest doesn't come exactly when we want to. And I think there too, if I look at Jacob's life, it wasn't until 20, 30 years down the road when God really said, you know what, I'm going to bless you now. Because he wrestled with God. You remember Jacob wrestling with God? And because Jacob was wrestling about his past. He's wrestling about how he was doing things, and he didn't want Leslie to let go, but he wanted the blessings. And finally, God, he threw his hip out. He says, now you have something to remember this day. Now go home, go back to your land, and you'll be blessed. And Jacob was fearful. I mean, he had fear all over the place. And he still thought Esau was coming after him. And when he got to the land, he saw Esau coming across the thing. It's kind of like the prodigal son. Esau comes over, he gives a big hug. He says, man, it's good to see you. So some of that animosity that happened, God took care of that. Some of that healing that needed to be taken care of, he took care of that. Because Jacob started doing things and sowing good seed, God blessed him on the other side of the stuff. Now, it took a while. But Jacob had to continue doing what he needed to do in order to do that. So I don't know how you do your spiritual inventories as far as what you're sowing versus what you're reaping. And for me, it's sitting down and saying, what's being productive out of what I'm sowing into? Am I sowing good seeds? And sometimes I'm not. Sometimes my seeds are really stinky and rotten. And I'll reap it. I know I will. And I've shared this before. My anger is probably the worst part, with my walk. And I know that carries over. That's what you'll reap. And when you're compassionate and caring, you reap those kind of things too. But sowing righteousness, Hosea 10:12 says, sow righteousness for yourself. Reap unfailing love. Break up the unplowed ground for yourself. For it is time to seek the Lord until he comes and showers deliverance on you. So you see, that's the whole reason why we sow good seeds. Is we're waiting for when Jesus comes back. And we want these kind of things. But are you third generation on your farm? Did your great-grandfather, did he plow the ground to begin with? All the rocks? Some of the farmers I talked to out in South Dakota, particularly out there, they had these sandstones, it was called. It was all over the place. And it took a lot because the builder, don't they call that generation builders? Okay. It works for you? Yeah. But it's the ones who came in there with a plow. And I mean, there's guys who are dying at 30, 40 years old because it's such hard work. I mean, they were doing the things and ripping up the ground and tilling it and plowing it and digging all the rocks out and getting it ready for the next generation to really reap the harvest. And now your generation, your next generation down, you guys are going to reap the harvest of the work that's being done today. But we have to sit back and look at our spiritual lives as the same way. How are we breaking ground? I mean, to me, sending 40 kids to camp is breaking ground. That is sowing good seed into good things so we can reap good things down the road. Because those kids that are going, a lot of them will come back and they'll be all pumped up about it and be excited about it, but those seeds are in there. Those seeds are planted for a whole week's worth of ministry. Those seeds are being planted. We can sit back, particularly the 5th and 6th grader. My granddaughter Carly's back from South Dakota. She's going to camp July 10th with Audrey and Evie and a couple other kids, and I'm super excited about that. But those are the seeds that are being planted. So we can sit back and we can watch these little ones grow in the Word, and we can say, man, look at that. That's a harvest we're reaping as a congregation. Don't you think that's the coolest thing? I mean, if you actually sit back and go, we've had kids that have gone into ministry over our years of ministry, and there's nothing better than those kids saying, you know what, I got to call the ministry. Ashton last week saying, you know what, I'm all in. I mean, to me, that's reaping a harvest of what our church is doing and what Mike has done as a parent, is what God's working in her life. I mean, these are things that you can sit back and say, good seeds are being poured into her right now. Now we get to reap some of that harvest. So, but it's our job to keep cultivating it and nurturing and watering it and all that kind of thing, because God takes care of all the rest, doesn't he? He says, I'll take care of the increase. You guys just do your job. So to me, we just got to continuously plant seeds. We got to continuously, just sow the good seeds that are going into the young people and each other. And particularly love. I like sitting back from our church, and I love watching the church family. I just love watching that and the unity that we have going on. And we don't always get along. But I'll tell you, at the end of meetings, at the end of the day, when we're doing things, love is prevailing. And those are the seeds that are being planted in this church, of care and compassion for one another. We might not agree with everything, but we don't have a division going on. And that's where God says, you know what? You're going to reap a reward off of that. And that's why we have Sunday school overflowing in the morning, both upstairs, downstairs, in our children's time. God's saying, you know what? You are being faithful with the little bit I gave you. Now I'm going to give you a little more. It's just like farming, isn't it? You took care of that little plot. I'm going to give you a little bit more, and then just a little bit more. And by the time you're done, you could have just a humongous acres of farming to take care of. And that's how we are here. What kind of seeds are we sowing into our people, into our community? Because there are stinky seeds. There are some really rotten seeds. Because if you don't take care of it and you don't store it right, you can open up that seed and then that seed will be rotten. And that's not gonna reap anything. So we need to be careful about the seeds that we're planting and how we're doing things in our community and with each other and our families. So we want the best crops that we can have. To me, I'm excited about that for our young people, particularly around here. Because, I'll be honest, all you guys, all the young ones are pretty much gone now, but all us old people, we could very easily say, you know what, we need to take care of the maintenance, we need to take care of the lights and the heat, we need to take care of all these little things that church does in order to maintain, and we're not. We're stepping out. We're saying, you know what, these kids are hungry. And we see that downstairs. These kids are hungry. They're there. They're coming. And more kids are coming. Really? 40 kids? Our average right now in attendance is what? 110, 120, right around there? That's huge. A third of that is kids 18 and under. That's pretty good. You know what the downfall is? They're a financial liability. They are. But that's when we kick it up. And we say, you know what? God's given me this whole bucket of seed. We'll take care of it. Jody with her thing, and she mentioned to me just this morning, how God is working in the hearts of these ladies who are coming on Tuesdays for the Bible study. We need to keep cultivating that. And when she's done, Christine talked about doing one, and Tina's doing one, and the chain gang. I really want the chain gang group to say, hey, we want to gather and just study God's Word in the afternoons or something. I got all kinds of things that we can be doing, as far as just cultivating that seed and planting good stuff. But I think that's where we're at right now. I think we want to plant good seed. Because to me, I think it's like Daryl or Ned or any of these guys. When it's planting season, it's kind of iffy. I don't know if I could do your kind of job, you guys. Go here. We're going to go plant a bunch of seed, and we're going to sit back and just let God do the work. Wow. And then you reap the harvest. Now, I don't know. That's crazy to me. But as we do that in the church here, we have to have faith like they do, that the harvest is going to be there. And I see excitement with these guys when they have a great harvest. They feel blessed. I hear that. They feel blessed that God is taking care of that part of things. And for me, we can sit back and say, wow, look at the harvest. Look at the harvest happening. And I hope all of you are really thinking about that. Not just sitting back and I don't want to say it. When we give to the church, give it with joyful hearts. Don't throw it in there and go, well, there's my $5 for the week, or $20 or $50. Really pray over that. Because I don't know if you've seen the seeds that are taking root off of that. Because it takes money to do everything in this world. Doesn't it? It really does. So, there's no way. I want you to think about this deeply. There's no way you send 40 kids to camp and the majority of them pay what? Over $50? $100 maybe? A team saying, you know what? Out of faith, we're going to step out there and we're going to continue. Because, see, for years, the conference gave a half to the church to send the kids to camp. Well, that dried up 2 years ago, I think, right? Those funds dried up because it doesn't last forever. And management said, you know what? We're going to continue with that. Don't know how that's going to work and how that's going to look. But if you've looked at the givings in the bulletin, we've exceeded budget more times than not this last year. Why? Because God's working in you guys. And I hate talking about money. But you know what? That's a sign to me, and I've said it over and over again. Check your calendar and check your checkbook. And by those two things, you can tell where your relationship with the Lord is going. Because He constantly talks about being obedient in those areas to Him. And if anybody can say, you know what, I've given too much this year, and I'm strapped, and you've done it joyfully, I'd be surprised to hear that. I hear more stories about how God has blessed your life because of that. And again, I'm not talking financials here. I'm talking seeds that we're planting. And to be honest, financial part is one of them. And what you're doing is awesome. So I'm not asking for more. I'm just asking to continue what God's doing in your life right now, because He's taking care of business. We haven't had to have Ivan and Jane and Bill and Dwayne come up here and say, okay, we didn't bring enough in the pot, we need to pass it through again. We haven't done that. And we're growing, and now I was a little disappointed with the van a couple weeks ago. I'll be honest with you. But, no, I'm kidding. But don't stop now is what I'm saying. We're in a momentum of really planting good seeds and reaping good harvests. Don't stop now. And I'm not just talking money. Your service. I don't know if you've noticed the last couple of years, we do an event. I noticed because I'm tearing down less chairs and tables every time. There's people that stick around and they help out, and they're doing these things. Our outreaches, we're actively involved in it. The carry-ins we do, just ministry in general, these are good seeds that are being planted. And then we can harvest it, and we can pull it out. And when the weeds come up within that good harvest, and they do, and that's our sin, we need to go in and do what? We need to weed. Sometimes we need to shoot the real strong stuff out there, and that's Jesus Christ. So think about the seeds that you're planting. Not just you adults, but you kids that have gone to camp, getting ready for school next year. My prayer, again, for our whole community is to accept Christ as their Savior. But can you imagine a few good planters in our school planting good seeds? What can happen? Our school will be different. And we start reaping that. So think about your seeds. Think about what you're sowing. Think about what you've been reaping lately. Seriously. sometimes we think, well, why is my life the way it is right now? Usually it's the way it is right now because of how you sowed. Because you might be reaping right now some not so good stuff. But what you need to do, you need to go wrestle with God a little bit. You need to turn some of that stuff over to Him. And God did. He says, I'll take it. He even changed His name. He says, you're no longer Jacob, you're Israel. You're a man of many nations. I got great things in store for you. So even all those screw-ups that Jacob did, God took care of it, moved it on, started planting good seeds, started reaping good stuff. And who's one of His descendants? Jesus Christ. Think about what's being poured into you. Think about what you're pouring into others. Think about what you're reaping. To me, I want all that cultivated and ready to go and reaping that good harvest